Hello, my friends. Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. It helps more than you know. Christmas has always been quiet for me. Not the cheerful, noisy kind you see in movies. No big family dinners, no laughter echoing through a crowded house, just lights, silence, and the steady ticking of the clock reminding me that another year was ending. This Christmas was supposed to be the same. It didn't turn out that way. I live alone in a small house on the edge of town, close enough to hear church bells on Christmas Eve, far enough that no one ever really comes by. Snow had started falling around sunset, thick and heavy, muffling the world outside. By the time darkness settled in, the streets were buried, the air perfectly still. I remember thinking how peaceful it felt. That should have been my first warning. I spent the evening the same way I always do. Simple dinner, an old Christmas movie playing quietly in the background, a few decorations I put up more out of habit than joy. A small artificial tree stood in the corner, its lights blinking unevenly, like they were struggling to stay alive. At exactly 9:17 p.m., the power went out. The movie cut to black. The lights vanished. The house fell into total darkness, broken only by the faint glow of moonlight filtering through the window. I sighed, more annoyed than scared. Power outages weren't uncommon during winter storms. I lit a few candles, the flames dancing nervously as if they sensed something I didn't. That's when I heard it. A bell. Not loud, not close. Just a single, delicate chime drifting through the air outside. I froze. No one rings bells around here. No carolers, no kids, no late-night visitors, especially not during a snowstorm. I told myself it was just the wind, maybe something loose blowing against metal. Then it rang again, closer this time. I walked to the front window and carefully pulled the curtain aside. The street was empty, buried in snow, glowing faintly under the streetlights. No movement, no footprints, nothing. And yet, the sound came again. Jingle. Right outside my door. My stomach tightened. I grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer and stood there, listening. My breath sounded too loud in my ears. Slowly, cautiously, I approached the door and looked through the peephole. Nothing. Just snow, no figure, no shadow, no sign of anyone standing there. I laughed nervously under my breath. "Get a grip," I whispered to myself. "It's Christmas. You're tired." I turned away. That's when the knocking started. 3 slow knocks, not aggressive, not friendly, intentional. My heart began to race. I didn't answer. I stood perfectly still, listening, hoping whoever, or whatever, was there would leave. Another knock, this time louder. I finally spoke, my voice shaking despite my effort to sound calm. "Who is it?" Silence. Then, from the other side of the door, a voice responded, soft, familiar. "Let me in." My blood went cold. The voice sounded like mine, same tone, same rhythm, same subtle hesitation before the last word. I stepped back, nearly tripping over the rug. "That's not funny," I said, though I didn't know who I was talking to anymore. The voice spoke again. "It's Christmas. You shouldn't be alone." My hand trembled as I reached for the lock, then stopped myself. I don't know why I didn't open it. Maybe instinct, maybe fear, maybe something deep inside me recognized that whatever was out there wasn't right. "I'm calling the police," I said. The voice sighed, a sound filled with disappointment. "That won't help," it replied. Then the knocking stopped. I waited for several minutes, my heart pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. When nothing else happened, I slowly backed away from the door and locked myself in the living room. That's when I noticed something else was wrong. The Christmas tree lights were on again, blinking, but the power was still out. I stared at the tree, my mouth dry. There was no electricity, no generator, nothing that should have made that possible. Yet the lights glowed brighter than before, casting strange shadows across the walls. Then I heard footsteps. Inside the house, upstairs, slow, heavy, familiar. I don't remember deciding to move, but suddenly I was at the bottom of the stairs, flashlight shaking in my hand, pointing upward. The steps creaked as if someone was standing there, just out of sight. "Hello?" I called. No answer. One step creaked, then another. Something was coming down. I backed away, my legs barely holding me upright. The beam of my flashlight flickered, then landed on the figure standing halfway down the stairs. It was me. Same face, same clothes, same terrified expression, but its smile was wrong, too wide, too still. "Merry Christmas," it said. I screamed. The lights exploded in brightness, the tree lights flashing wildly, the candles extinguishing all at once. The house plunged into darkness again, except now the darkness felt thick, alive. I ran. I don't remember where I was going, only that I needed to get out. I fumbled with the front door, finally ripping it open and stumbling into the snow. The cold hit me like a wall. I ran down the street barefoot, my feet numb, my lungs burning. Behind me, I heard the bell again. Jingle. Every time I turned around, I thought I saw someone following me, just at the edge of the streetlight's glow. Eventually, I reached the church at the end of the road. Its doors were open, warm light spilling out into the snow. I ran inside and collapsed on the floor, gasping for air. The church was empty. No decorations, no candles, no signs of Christmas at all. Just silence. I stood up slowly and turned toward the altar. There was a mirror where the cross should have been, and in that mirror, I saw myself standing behind me. Its hand rested gently on my shoulder. "You didn't really think you could leave," it whispered. Everything went black. I woke up in my bed. Morning light filtered through the window. The power was back on. The Christmas tree lights blinked peacefully. No footprints in the snow, no broken door, no church. I told myself it was a nightmare. I believed it, until I went to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. For just a moment, just long enough to notice, the reflection smiled before I did. And somewhere deep inside me, I knew the truth. Something went wrong that Christmas, and it never left. I used to believe Christmas was harmless. Lights, music, familiar routines that made time feel safe, predictable. Even when life fell apart, Christmas stayed the same. That was the deal, I thought. The world could change, people could leave, but Christmas would always repeat itself exactly as it should. That belief is what nearly destroyed me. And maybe did. The trouble started on December 24th, the year I decided not to go home. My family expected me, of course. They always did. But something in me resisted this time. A dull pressure behind my eyes, a sense that returning would reopen something I had spent years carefully sealing shut. So I stayed. Snow buried the city overnight, heavy enough to silence traffic, thick enough to erase footprints. By evening, the streets outside my apartment looked untouched, as if no one had ever lived there at all. I remember thinking it looked peaceful. I should have known better. At 6:03 p.m., my phone buzzed with a message. "Mom, are you on your way?" I didn't reply. At 6:17, another message arrived. "Mom, we're waiting." The typing bubble appeared for several seconds, then vanished. That's when the doorbell rang. I frowned. No one ever visited me, especially not unannounced and certainly not during a snowstorm. I checked the peephole. No one was there. I stepped back annoyed, telling myself it was a neighbor or some electrical issue. The building was old. Everything creaked, rang and groaned without explanation. Then the bell rang again. Longer this time. I opened the door. The hallway was empty, but sitting neatly on the welcome mat was a small gift wrapped in red paper. No name, no tag, just a bow tied with almost obsessive precision. My stomach tightened. I brought it inside and locked the door. The gift was light, too light. When I shook it gently, nothing moved, no sound, no shifting weight. I didn't want to open it. That should have been enough of a warning. But curiosity won. Inside the box was a VHS tape. No case art, no label, just one word written directly onto the black plastic and silver marker. Play. I don't even own a VCR anymore, or at least, I didn't think I did. I turned toward the TV. A VCR sat beneath it, dustless, plugged in, waiting. I felt a strange pressure in my chest, like I'd stepped somewhere I wasn't supposed to be. My hands moved anyway, sliding the tape into the machine. The TV flickered to life, static. Then an image appeared. My parents' living room, decorated for Christmas. I frowned. The angle was wrong, too high, too distant, like the footage was taken from a corner near the ceiling. The timestamp appeared in the corner of the screen. Deck 24, 6:03 p.m. My phone buzzed in my pocket. The video showed my mother pacing, checking her phone. My father sat on the couch, staring straight ahead, unmoving. "I don't like this," my mother said in the video. "He should be here by now." My heart began to race. This wasn't old footage. This was happening now. The doorbell rang again in the video. My parents turned toward the door. The screen cut to black. The tape rewound itself with a violent whirring sound. Then the TV shut off. I stood there shaking, my mind scrambling for explanations that refused to make sense. My phone buzzed again. "Mom, why didn't you come?" Before I could respond, the lights went out. Not just my apartment, every window outside went dark at once. The city vanished into a black void broken only by falling snow. Then, I heard something else. Applause, slow, measured, coming from inside the walls. I backed away from the TV, heart pounding, ears ringing. The applause grew louder, echoing from every direction until it stopped abruptly. The TV turned on again. This time, it showed me, sitting on my couch, watching the screen. My breathing became shallow. I raised my hand. The person on the screen raised theirs too, but half a second later than mine. Out of sync. Behind the version of me on the screen, something stood in the doorway. Tall, still, unmoving. I couldn't see its face, only its outline, too narrow at the shoulders, too long at the arms. The thing leaned forward and whispered something into my on-screen ear. The version of me on the TV smiled. I screamed and ripped the power cord from the wall. The TV went dark. The apartment didn't feel empty anymore. I could sense movement just beyond my vision, subtle shifts in air pressure, the faint sound of breathing that wasn't mine. Then I smelled pine. Fresh. Overwhelming. The scent of a Christmas tree filled the apartment, thick and choking. I turned slowly toward the corner where my tree should have been. It wasn't there earlier. Now it stood fully decorated, towering nearly to the ceiling. The ornaments were wrong. They weren't shiny or colorful. They were photographs, hundreds of them. Each one showed moments from my life I had never photographed. Conversations, private breakdowns, moments alone when no one should have been watching. At the top of the tree was a single ornament shaped like a face. My face. The lights flickered. Then every photograph turned to face me at once. I heard a voice behind me. "You left." I spun around. My mother stood in the doorway, but she was wrong. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Her skin looked stretched too tightly, like it didn't quite fit what was underneath. We waited, she said gently. Christmas doesn't work unless everyone shows up. I didn't. My voice broke. This isn't real. She tilted her head. Isn't it? My phone rang. I looked down. Incoming call. Me. I didn't answer. The ringing continued anyway, echoing through the apartment without the phone vibrating. Then my voice spoke from behind me. You weren't supposed to remember. I turned slowly. I was standing there, not a reflection, not a screen. Me, same clothes, same expression, except his eyes were filled with something cold and endless. He stepped closer. Every year, he said softly, someone tries to leave. Christmas fixes it. The walls began to shift, stretching outward like rubber. The ceiling rose impossibly high, decorated with endless strings of lights that hummed like insects. You stayed last time, he continued. You just don't remember. Memories flooded my mind. Christmas mornings that felt slightly wrong, conversations that repeated word for word, a sense of déjà vu I had always ignored. How many times? I whispered. He smiled. Enough. The doorbell rang again, behind me. I felt hands grip my shoulders, dozens of them, cold, familiar, pulling me backward. You can go, my double whispered into my ear, but someone has to stay. The lights exploded into blinding white. I woke up on my couch. Morning sunlight filled the apartment. The tree was gone. No VHS, no VCR. My phone buzzed. Mom, Merry Christmas. Can't wait to see you tonight. I stared at the message, my heart pounding. Then I noticed something on my welcome mat. A small red gift, wrapped perfectly, waiting. I noticed the mistake at exactly 12:01 a.m. on Christmas Day. At first it felt small, almost polite, like the world was embarrassed to point it out. The digital clock in my microwave flipped from 12 o'clock to 12:01, then hesitated, the numbers flickering faintly. I watched, half asleep, waiting for it to settle. Instead, it reset, 11:59. I frowned and rubbed my eyes. The clock clicked forward again. 12:01. Then, once more, it snapped back to 11:59. I laughed quietly. Cheap electronics, I muttered. I didn't know yet that Christmas had already decided something was wrong, and that something was me. I live alone in a narrow townhouse at the end of a row, the kind built too close together, where you can hear your neighbors breathe if the walls are thin enough. I had planned to sleep through most of Christmas Day. No family, no obligations, no traditions worth maintaining. Outside, snow fell in perfect silence. No wind, no cars, no distant sirens, just snow, erasing the world 1 inch at a time. At 12:14 a.m., my phone vibrated. Unknown number. You missed it. Missed what? I typed back a question mark. The message disappeared before I could send it. That's when I realized the house was too quiet. Not the comfortable kind of quiet, but the unnatural kind. The kind where even your own breathing sounds intrusive, like you're violating some rule. I stood and walked into the living room. The Christmas tree was lit. That wasn't right. I hadn't plugged it in. I hadn't even put ornaments on it this year. Just the bare tree, undecorated, leaning slightly to one side like it didn't want to be there either. But now it was decorated. Perfectly. Every branch evenly spaced, every ornament identical. Small glass spheres filled with swirling white fog, like trapped breath. The lights weren't blinking. They were watching. I reached out and touched one of the ornaments. It was warm. The fog inside shifted, forming something that looked almost like a face before dissolving again. I pulled my hand back. Nope, I whispered. Behind me, the microwave clock beeped. I turned. 11:59. Again. A soft voice drifted from the hallway. You're early. I spun around. No one stood there. The hallway stretched longer than it should have, dim and narrow, the shadows thickening toward the end. "I'm not in the mood for this," I said aloud, trying to ground myself. "It's a dream, or a panic thing." The voice answered, closer now. "You always say that." My heart slammed against my ribs. That voice knew me. Not just the sound, the memory behind it, the way it carried familiarity without warmth, like someone repeating your name after you've forgotten theirs. The front door creaked. Slowly, as if someone were testing whether it was allowed. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam barely reached the end of the hall before dimming, like the darkness was absorbing it. The door opened fully. Snow spilled in, but it didn't melt. It rested on the floor like ash. A figure stepped inside, tall, wrapped in a red coat that looked too heavy for its thin frame. White fur trimmed the hood, matted and yellowed with age. I knew who it was supposed to be before I saw its face. Santa, but wrong. Its beard hung in wet clumps, its skin gray and cracked like dried paint. Its eyes were empty sockets filled with softly glowing light, like distant stars. It smelled like cold iron and pine sap. "You weren't supposed to be awake," it said. Its voice wasn't deep or cheerful. It was administrative, bored. "What are you?" I whispered. It tilted its head. "I'm the correction." The microwave beeped again, 11:59. The figure glanced toward the sound. "You see," it said, "Christmas keeps restarting. That only happens when something doesn't belong." My stomach dropped. "You're wrong," I said. "I live here." The thing smiled, its mouth splitting too wide. "You live now." It stepped closer. Every step left a footprint in the air, brief distortions, like pressure against invisible glass. "You died last winter," it continued calmly. "Car accident, December 23rd. You weren't supposed to make it to Christmas." Memories surged, headlights spinning metal, the taste of blood and snow. I staggered back. "No," I said. "I remember Christmas last year." The thing nodded. "Yes, so do we." The walls began to shimmer, like heat rising from pavement. Images flickered across them. Christmas mornings, identical year after year. The same conversations, the same gifts, the same songs playing at the exact same times. A loop. "You've been repeating," it said, "unnoticed, uncorrected." The Christmas tree lights brightened until the room glowed white, the ornaments filled with foggy shapes, people, faces, frozen moments of terror. "Those are the others," the thing said gently. "People who overstayed." My phone rang. Incoming call. Me. My hands shook as I answered. My voice spoke from the other end. "You need to let it finish." "Finish what?" I whispered. "Christmas," my voice replied. "If it doesn't end, none of us can leave." The Santa figure stepped forward, placing a cold, heavy hand on my chest. "You have two choices," it said. "Stay and let Christmas reset forever." The room darkened. "Or go," it continued, "and let the day finally end." "What happens if I go?" It leaned close. "Christmas will forget you." The microwave clock ticked. 12 o'clock. For the first time, it didn't reset. The ornaments cracked, releasing screams that collapsed into silence. Snow rushed through the open door, pulling me forward. The last thing I saw was the Santa figure standing still, watching as the world folded inward like wrapping paper. I woke up in a hospital bed. December 26th. A nurse told me I'd been in a coma since a car accident on December 23rd. She smiled and said, "You're lucky. You missed Christmas." I smiled back. But I know the truth. Sometimes, at night, my phone lights up with a missed call. From me. And somewhere, deep inside the dark between seconds, Christmas is still waiting to be corrected. The invitation arrived on December 23rd. That alone should have terrified me. I hadn't spoken to my family in years, not since the argument that fractured everything into before and after. No calls, no messages, no holiday cards pretending nothing had happened. Christmas, especially, had become something I avoided like a bad memory. So when I found the envelope slid neatly under my apartment door, my first thought was that someone had made a mistake. My name was written on the front in careful handwriting, perfectly straight, perfectly familiar. I stared at it for a long time before picking it up. The paper felt thick, old-fashioned, the kind people used before everything became disposable. There was no return address. Inside was a single card. Christmas dinner, December 25th, 6 p.m. You're expected, no signature, no address, just expectation. I laughed, uneasy, and tossed it onto the counter. Some kind of prank, I decided, or a neighbor's misdelivered invitation. Still, I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. That night, I dreamed of my childhood home. Not the way it was, but the way it felt. Warm, too quiet, heavy with the smell of pine and something metallic underneath. In the dream, every clock in the house read 5:59 p.m., and no matter how long I waited, it never changed. I woke up sweating. On Christmas Eve, it started snowing, not gentle flakes, thick, relentless snow that buried cars, sealed doors, swallowed the city whole. By evening, the streets outside my window looked like an unfinished painting. White, featureless, wrong. That's when my phone buzzed. Unknown number, tomorrow. Don't be late. I didn't reply. I turned my phone off. At 5:30 p.m. on Christmas Day, the knocking began. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 more. I stood frozen in my living room, heart pounding. I wasn't expecting anyone. I hadn't ordered food. No one knew I was here. The knocking came again, slower this time. I approached the door and looked through the peephole. Snow. Only snow. No footprints, no shadow. I opened the door. The hallway was gone. In its place stood my childhood street, perfectly recreated, lampposts glowing softly, snow falling exactly the way it used to when I was young. At the end of the street stood my parents' house, every window lit, warm, inviting, impossible. I tried to step back. The door closed behind me. The cold didn't bite. It didn't sting. It felt controlled, like it wasn't allowed to hurt me. As I walked toward the house, I noticed something unsettling. There were no other houses, just mine. The door opened before I could knock. My mother stood there smiling. She looked exactly as she had the last Christmas before everything went wrong. Same sweater, same earrings, same tired eyes. "You made it," she said. Her voice was perfect, too perfect. "You shouldn't be here," I whispered. She frowned slightly, like I'd said something rude. "Of course you should. It's Christmas." Inside, the house was immaculate, not lived in, preserved. Decorations placed with obsessive care. The tree stood tall and full, its ornaments identical, reflecting the room back at itself in endless repetition. My father sat at the table, carving a turkey that never seemed to get smaller no matter how many slices he made. "Sit," he said, without looking up. I didn't. Something felt off in the air, like static before a storm. The clock above the fireplace read 5:59 p.m. "It's almost time," my mother said. "For what?" I asked. She smiled wider. "Dinner." The clock ticked. Nothing changed. I noticed then that there were place settings for more people than should have been there. 1, 2, 3, 4, and one empty seat at the end of the table. Mine. I backed toward the door. My mother's smile faltered. "You're already late," she said. The lights flickered. For just a moment, the room dropped its disguise. The walls were cracked and damp. The tree's needles were black and falling. The ornaments weren't ornaments at all. They were small, distorted faces frozen in silent screams. The turkey on the table was raw. And my father, he wasn't cutting meat. He was cutting time. Each slice caused the clock to shudder. "You weren't supposed to remember," he said calmly. I ran. The hallway stretched impossibly long, doors lining both sides. I opened one at random and nearly collapsed. It was my apartment. My real apartment, but wrong. The furniture was covered in dust. The calendar on the wall read, December 25th. Every year crossed out except this one. Photographs covered the walls. Photos of me sitting at that dinner table, year after year. Same expression, same empty smile. I felt sick. How many times, I whispered. A voice answered from behind me. As many as it takes. I turned. It was me. Older, thinner, hollow-eyed. You keep leaving, he said. Christmas keeps bringing you back. I don't understand, I said. He laughed softly. Neither did I, at first. The walls began to close in. I could hear the dining room behind me, chairs scraping, silverware clinking, the sound of people waiting. You broke Christmas, my double continued. Back then, when you left, when you said what you said. The memory slammed into me, the shouting, the accusations, the moment I walked out and never came back. You never finished it, he said, so it never finished you. The clock chimed. 6 p.m. The door behind me burst open. Hands grabbed me, warm, familiar, insistent, pulling me back toward the table. Sit, my mother pleaded. Eat, my father demanded. I screamed and fought, clawing at the floor. Something cracked. The clock shattered. The house screamed. Light poured in from nowhere, tearing the walls apart like paper. I felt myself falling, spinning, unraveling. I woke up on my apartment floor. Christmas lights blinked softly. My phone buzzed. Mom, dinner's ready. Where are you? I stared at the message. Then I noticed something on my table. A place setting, clean, waiting. And deep in my chest, I felt it, that unbearable certainty. Something went wrong on Christmas, and this time, it's not done with me. I lied on Christmas Eve. Not a big lie. Not one meant to hurt anyone. Just a small, careful lie designed to keep everything peaceful. And that was my mistake. It started with a voicemail. I was standing in my kitchen, staring at a mug of coffee I didn't really want when my phone buzzed. I almost ignored it. Christmas Eve had a way of demanding attention even when you wanted to disappear. The voicemail was from my sister. Hey, she said softly, the sound of the holiday music playing somewhere behind her. Just checking in. Mom keeps asking if you're coming tomorrow. You don't have to if you're not ready. Just let us know, okay? I closed my eyes. I hadn't been home for Christmas in 3 years. Ever since Dad died, since that Christmas, things felt wrong. The house, the traditions, the way everyone pretended nothing had changed. So I lied. I texted back, yeah, I'll be there tomorrow morning. The moment I hit send, something in the apartment shifted. It wasn't a sound. It was a pressure, like the air had been holding its breath and finally exhaled. I didn't notice it first. I wish I had. Snow fell all night. By morning, my street was buried under thick white drifts that swallowed cars and sidewalks alike. I packed an overnight bag anyway, out of habit more than intention. I told myself I could still change my mind, that the lie didn't have to become real. At 9:12 a.m., the radio turned on by itself. Static hissed, then faded into a familiar tune. You better watch out, you better not cry. I frowned and turned it off. 10 minutes later, it turned back on. Same song, same volume. This time, I unplugged it. The song didn't stop. It continued, thin and distant, like it was coming from inside the walls. I grabbed my coat and headed for the door. The hallway outside my apartment looked longer than usual. The lights flickered, stretching shadows that didn't quite match the shapes casting them. Halfway to the stairs, I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, measured, matching my pace. I stopped. The footsteps stopped. I turned. The hallway was empty. I laughed nervously and kept walking. The front door of the building opened onto blinding white snow. No plowed roads, no tire tracks, no footprints except mine, which filled in seconds after I stepped. I hesitated. My phone buzzed. Mom. Drive safe. We'll be waiting. My stomach twisted. I stepped outside. The door closed behind me with a final heavy click. The street was gone, not covered, gone. In its place stood a long, straight road lined with identical houses, each one decorated with the same lights, the same wreaths, the same glowing windows. Every house was my parents' house. Every driveway was empty. Every front door stood slightly open. I turned back. The apartment building was gone too. The road stretched endlessly in both directions, snow falling in perfect silent symmetry. Then I heard it. A bell, not jingling, counting. Ding, 1, ding, 2. A voice spoke behind me. "You said you'd come." I spun around. My father stood there, or something wearing his shape. He looked the way he had the last Christmas I saw him, healthy, smiling, holding his coat closed against the cold. Except his eyes were wrong, too clear, too still. "You shouldn't be here," I whispered. He tilted his head. "But you said you would." The bell rang again. Ding. 3. "I lied," I said, my voice shaking. "I didn't mean..." His smile faltered. "Oh," he said softly. "Christmas hates that." The house's lights flickered, windows filled with movement, figures sitting at dinner tables, opening gifts, laughing with mouths that opened too wide and closed too slowly. "You don't lie on Christmas," my father said. "You commit." The bell rang. Ding. 4. The road behind me vanished. The only house left was his, our house. Its front door opened wider, warm light spilling out. "You can still fix it," he said. "Just come inside." I backed away. I don't belong there anymore. The snow stopped falling. Every sound vanished. The bell rang again. Ding. 5. The world lurched. Suddenly, I was standing in the living room. The Christmas tree stood tall and perfect, decorated with ornaments shaped like little mouths, each one whispering softly. Stockings hung from the mantel, stitched with names. Mine was there, fresh, new. Dinner was already set. My mother stood at the table, arranging plates. She looked younger, too young. "You're late," she said gently. "I didn't come," I said. "I didn't want to." She paused. Slowly, she turned toward me. Her smile trembled. "That's not how Christmas remembers it." The clock above the fireplace read 11:59 a.m. It ticked and never changed. My sister sat at the table, staring straight ahead. "Sit," she said without looking at me. "I can't," I whispered. The ornaments began to hum, their whispers growing louder, overlapping. "You said you'd come. You promised. Don't break Christmas." I noticed then that every chair at the table was occupied, except one. Mine. I stepped back. The room stretched, the walls bowing outward like lungs filling with air. The tree lights flared bright enough to hurt my eyes. "You don't get to leave halfway," my father said, his voice suddenly cold. "That's what went wrong last time." "What do you mean last time?" I asked. The clock cracked. Images flooded my mind. Previous Christmases I didn't remember attending. Me sitting at that table, smiling, laughing, pretending. Each year, the same moment where something in me tried to pull away. Each year, I stayed, until I didn't. "That broke the pattern," my mother said. "We had to start over." The bell rang loudly now, shaking the walls. Ding. "Sit," they all said together. I ran. The hallway twisted, doors slamming open as I passed. Each room showed a different Christmas, different years, different versions of me, some older, some younger, all ending the same way. At the table, smiling. I burst through the front door. Snow swallowed me whole. I felt hands pulling me back, voices pleading, demanding. "Finish Christmas. Don't lie. Stay." I screamed and tore free. The bell rang one last time. Then, silence. I woke up in my apartment. Morning light streamed through the window. My phone buzzed. "Sister." "Hey, Mom says you never showed. Guess we'll see you next year." I stared at the message. Relief washed over me. Then I noticed something hanging on my wall. A stocking, freshly stitched. with my name on it. Inside was a small card. "Thank you for coming. Christmas remembers." And deep in my chest, I felt it. That quiet certainty. I didn't get away. I just postponed it. Because Christmas knows when you're lying, and it never forgets. I didn't buy the Advent calendar. That's important. It appeared on my kitchen table sometime during the night, standing upright like it belonged there. Thick cardboard, deep green, dusted with artificial snow. 25 little doors, each outlined in gold. On the front was an illustration of a house at night, every window glowing warmly. I stood there for a long time that morning, coffee growing cold in my hand, trying to remember bringing it home. I live alone. No kids, no reason to own one. Still, I told myself it must have been a gift. A neighbor maybe. Or something I ordered online during a late-night scroll I didn't remember. That lie lasted exactly 3 seconds, because written across the top, in neat handwriting, was my name. Not printed, written. December 1st, I opened the first door because it felt rude not to. Inside was nothing, just darkness, deeper than cardboard should allow. I tipped the calendar, expecting something to fall out. Nothing did. That night I dreamed of my childhood home, not a specific memory, just the house itself, standing alone under snow, every light on inside, waiting. I woke with the feeling that someone had been watching me sleep. When I checked the calendar that morning, door 1 was gone. Not open. Gone. Like it had never existed. December 3rd. I skipped the second day. On purpose. The calendar didn't like that. I woke up late on the 3rd to the sound of knocking, soft, rhythmic, coming from inside my apartment. I followed it to the kitchen. The calendar sat open on the table. Door 2 hung ajar. Inside was a photograph, me, standing in my living room, taken from the hallway. I dropped it, heart racing, and spun around. No one was there. When I looked back, the photo was gone. Door 2 had vanished like the first. I didn't sleep that night. December 6th. By now, I understood the rules. Open the door, or the calendar would open it for me. Door 3 held a sound instead of an object, the faint echo of laughter I recognized instantly. My mother's laugh. I hadn't heard it since the Christmas she died. Door 4 contained a smell. Pine and smoke and something bitter underneath, so strong it made my eyes water. Door 5 held a key. Old. Cold. When I touched it, my hand shook violently, and a memory slammed into me. Standing outside my childhood home, key in hand, arguing with my father through the door while snow piled at my feet. I remembered screaming. I remembered leaving. I remembered never coming back. That night, I dreamed of the house again. This time, one window was dark. December 10th. The calendar was changing. The illustration on the front no longer showed a cozy house. The snow had turned gray. The windows glowed unevenly, some dark, some too bright. Inside, door 7 was a tiny clock, its hands stuck at 11:59. Inside door 8 was a fingernail. Inside door 9. I didn't open door 9. I tried to throw the calendar away instead. It wouldn't move, not heavy, anchored, like it was part of the table itself. I yanked so hard the table slid across the floor, but the calendar stayed upright, perfectly still. When I stepped back, breathing hard, door 9 slowly creaked open on its own. Inside was a slip of paper. You're behind. The lights went out. I woke up on the kitchen floor, cheek pressed against cold tile. The calendar stood above me. Door 10 was gone. I don't know what was inside it, but something had changed. The apartment felt smaller, the walls closer. Sounds didn't echo the way they used to, like the space was being packed tighter around me. I started hearing Christmas music at night, not from the radio, from the walls, always the same song, always skipping at the same line. Peace on ear, ear, ear. December 15th. I opened door 15 with shaking hands. Inside was a miniature version of my apartment, perfectly detailed, furniture, pictures, even the crack in the ceiling I kept meaning to fix. There was a tiny version of me standing in the kitchen, staring up. Its mouth moved. I slammed the door shut. Behind me, something moved. Slow, careful, breathing. I turned around. Nothing. But when I looked back at the calendar, the miniature apartment was gone. So was my living room. The wall where it should have been now showed a painted image of a hallway. A hallway I recognized. The hallway of my childhood home. I stopped going to work, stopped answering my phone. The outside world felt distant, unreal, like it belonged to someone else. Snow fell endlessly beyond my windows, but I never saw plows, never heard cars. Every night the house from the calendar grew clearer. More doors, more rooms. I recognized them all. Places I had avoided remembering. December 20. Door 20 held a chair, a dining chair, one of 6. It was my chair. I knew because of the loose screw underneath the seat, the one my father never fixed. That night I heard plates clinking, silverware scraping, voices murmuring in the next room, a room that no longer existed in my apartment. December 23rd. I was running out of space. Entire walls had turned into painted scenes, windows looking into rooms that shouldn't exist. Through them, I saw movement, familiar shapes, my family, waiting. Door 23 opened easily. Inside was a note written in my handwriting, "Don't leave the table." This time I screamed until my throat bled. December 24th, Christmas Eve. The calendar looked complete now. Only one door remained. The illustration on the front was no longer a drawing. It was a mirror. I saw myself standing there, thinner, paler, eyes hollow with exhaustion. Behind me, through the reflection, I saw the house, fully real, fully awake. The front door of my apartment opened. Warm light spilled in. My mother stood there, smiling gently. "We're ready," she said. I shook my head, backing away. "No," I whispered. "I can't." She looked sad. "That's what you said last time." Hands emerged from the walls, familiar hands grabbing, guiding, pulling me forward. The smell of dinner filled the air. Turkey, gravy, burnt edges. I was dragged through the doorway. The dining room was exactly as I remembered. 6 chairs, 5 occupied. My family looked up as I entered. They didn't smile, they just watched. The clock on the wall read 11:59. My father stood behind my chair. "You left before Christmas finished," he said. "That broke it." "I didn't know," I sobbed. "You knew," my sister said softly. "You just didn't stay." The clock ticked, didn't move. "Sit," my mother said. I sat. The room exhaled. The clock struck midnight, December 25th. I woke up at the table, alone. The house was silent. The clock read 12 o'clock, for the first time. I stumbled back into my apartment. Everything was normal again. Walls returned, rooms restored. The calendar lay flat on the table. Only door 25 remained. I didn't want to open it, but my hand moved anyway. Inside was a small card. "Thank you for finishing Christmas." I laughed. I cried. I slept for hours. Now it's December 26th. The calendar is gone. The apartment feels normal, but something is wrong. I don't remember leaving the table. I don't remember saying goodbye. And when I look in the mirror, sometimes I'm still sitting there, waiting. Because Christmas doesn't like being abandoned. And next year, I don't think it's letting me go. The radio crackled to life at 2:14 a.m. on Christmas morning. I know the exact time because I checked my watch the moment it happened, annoyed and half asleep. I had turned the radio off before going to bed. I always did. Silence was the only thing that made Christmas bearable anymore. But there it was, hissing static, low and patient, like someone clearing their throat before speaking. I reached over from the couch and turned the volume down. It didn't change. I turned the dial. Nothing. The sound didn't come from the radio anymore. It came from the room. Then a voice slipped through the static. Testing, testing. If you can hear this, you're already too late. My blood ran cold. I work overnight maintenance for the county roads, the kind of job that keeps you awake while the rest of the world pretends Christmas is warm and safe. That year, a blizzard had shut everything down. No plows, no patrols. Just me, alone in the small service building at the edge of town, waiting out the storm. I hadn't planned on going home. I never do on Christmas. Too many memories stacked up there, too many empty chairs. So I stayed. The radio sat on the desk across the room, old analog, powered off. The red LED was dark, and yet the voice continued. This message will repeat, it said calmly, because someone always misses it the first time. The lights flickered. Outside, the wind howled across the empty lot, snow slamming against the windows like thrown handfuls of salt. Who is this? I asked. My voice sounded small. The static shifted. Then the voice said my name, not shouted, not questioned, spoken like a fact. You're on duty tonight, it continued, which means you're still available. My heart hammered. This is a prank, I said. Some emergency channel or... No, the voice interrupted gently. This is Christmas. The word Christmas dragged, distorted, like the tape had stretched. I stood up slowly. I'm turning this off. You already did. The radio dial began to turn on its own. Click, click, click. Every frequency produced the same sound, the same voice. You're the only one left awake, it said, so you get the job. The building shuddered. I smelled pine, not fresh pine, old pine, dry and brittle, like forgotten decorations pulled from a basement box. The door behind me creaked open. I didn't hear footsteps. I felt them, vibrations in the floor, measured and slow. You're not supposed to be here, I whispered. The voice from the radio answered. No, it said, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. A shape moved in the doorway, tall, wrapped in a red coat so dark it looked almost black. The fabric hung wrong, sagging where a body shouldn't sag. Its boots left no prints. It didn't breathe. Every Christmas, the voice continued, now layered, coming from the radio and the figure at the same time. Someone has to keep things running, roads, power, traditions. The figure stepped closer. Its face was pale and smooth, like wax left too close to heat. The eyes were empty holes filled with softly glowing snow. You used to do it, it said. My stomach twisted. I don't know you. The thing tilted its head. You do, it said. You just stopped showing up. Memories slammed into me. Christmases I didn't remember attending, standing outside in the cold, fixing broken lines, clearing roads no one drove on, doing work that didn't feel optional. What happens if I say no? I asked. The radio crackled louder. Then the sound of screaming slipped through, distant, layered, overlapping. Then Christmas breaks, the thing said simply. The walls began to peel, not paint, time. The building faded, revealing a long stretch of road outside, buried under endless snow. Cars were frozen mid-slide, doors open, people trapped inside like decorations sealed in ice. All of this, the voice said, depends on someone staying awake. The thing stepped closer and placed a cold hand on my shoulder. You fell asleep last year." The wind stopped. The world held its breath. I remembered then. Christmas Eve. Exhaustion pulling over just for a second. Snow filling the cab window. A voice on the radio calling my name. And me, ignoring it, driving home instead. "What happened?" I whispered. The thing smiled, and behind it, the road began to collapse. "Something went wrong," the radio screamed. I woke up in my truck, engine off. Snow piled halfway up the doors. The clock read 2:14 a.m. The radio crackled. "Testing, testing, if you can hear this." My hands shook. I slammed the radio off. Silence. The storm outside was gone. The road was clear. I drove home without stopping. It's Christmas night now. I'm writing this because the radio turned on again. Same time, same voice, same message. But this time, it added something new. Last chance. Outside my window, snow has started to fall. And somewhere in the distance, I hear engines stalling. I don't think I'm supposed to sleep tonight, because whatever went wrong last Christmas is waiting for me to fix it. And this time, I don't think it will let me leave. The train wasn't on the schedule. That was the first thing I noticed. The second thing was that it had my name on it. I was at the station because I had nowhere else to go. Christmas Eve has a way of forcing choices on you. Go home, stay alone, or pretend movement counts as purpose. I chose the third option. Bought a cheap ticket for the last train out of the city, didn't even care where it went. Anywhere was better than sitting in my apartment listening to other people celebrate lives I no longer belonged to. The station was almost empty. Snow drifted in through the open sides, settling on the tracks like a burial cloth. The digital board flickered overhead, listing delays and cancellations in cold orange text. Every train was canceled, except one. 12:25 a.m. Line unknown, on time. That didn't make sense. No destination, no platform number, just on time, blinking steadily, confidently. Behind me, metal screamed. I turned as a train rolled into the station without warning. No announcement, no lights along the tunnel beforehand. It slid in silently, black cars swallowing the weak station lights. The windows were fogged from the inside. The doors opened. No one stepped out. I hesitated. Every instinct told me to walk away, to leave the station, to go anywhere else. But the cold had settled deep in my bones, and something about the open doors felt patient. Like it knew I'd come. I stepped inside. The train smelled like pine and dust, like old decorations pulled from storage once a year. Red and green fabric lined the seats, but the colors were faded, leached of warmth. Christmas garlands hung overhead, tangled and dry, their needles shedding softly onto the floor. There were passengers, dozens of them, all sitting perfectly still. Men, women, children, dressed for winter, coats buttoned, scarves wrapped tight. Their faces were calm, peaceful even. Too peaceful. No one blinked. I took a step back toward the door. It closed. The train lurched forward. A voice crackled over the intercom. "Welcome aboard," it said cheerfully. "This train is now departing. Please remain seated until Christmas is complete." My heart began to pound. "Excuse me," I said to the nearest passenger, a middle-aged man clutching a wrapped gift. "Do you know where this train is going?" He didn't move, didn't breathe. I reached out and waved my hand in front of his eyes. Nothing. That's when I noticed the ticket in my hand. I didn't remember buying it. It was thick, old paper, the kind that cuts your fingers if you're not careful. Printed across the top in elegant lettering, Christmas Express, below it in bold ink. Passenger my name. Seat, non-optional. The train lights flickered. Outside the windows, the city dissolved into darkness. The first stop came too quickly. The train slowed, screeching softly, and pulled into a snow-covered platform lit by flickering lamps. A sign hung crookedly overhead. Last year, the doors opened. Suddenly, the passengers moved. All at once, they stood in perfect unison and began filing toward the doors, their movements stiff, practiced. I was carried along by the crowd, unable to fight the pressure of bodies guiding me forward. Outside, the air smelled familiar. My childhood neighborhood. The houses were exactly as they had been years ago. Same decorations, same lights, same inflated Santa leaning drunkenly against a fence. My parents' house stood at the end of the street, glowing. "I don't want to be here," I whispered. A conductor appeared beside me. I hadn't seen him before. He wore a dark uniform trimmed in gold, his face obscured by shadow beneath his cap. "Everyone says that," he replied pleasantly. "At first." The passengers began walking toward their homes, disappearing through doors and gates. I saw scenes unfold through windows, families laughing, gifts being exchanged, dinners served. But something was wrong. Every smile lingered too long. Every laugh repeated at the exact same pitch, the same moments looping over and over. "What is this place?" I asked. The conductor adjusted his gloves. "A stop," he said. "You didn't finish Christmas last year." My chest tightened. "I did," I said. "I remember. I stayed home, alone." He tilted his head. "Yes," he said. "That's the problem." The bell rang. All the passengers froze. Then they turned toward me. Their eyes were open now, empty. "You skipped it," the conductor said. "You left it unfinished." Hands grabbed my arms and dragged me back onto the train. The doors slammed shut. The train accelerated violently, lights flashing red and green. I fell into a seat, gasping for breath. Across from me, a young woman stared blankly at the wall. Her hands were wrapped in bloody bandages. "What happened to you?" I asked. Her mouth moved slowly. "I tried to get off early," she whispered. The intercom crackled. "Next stop," the cheerful voice announced, "the one you avoided." The lights went out. When they came back on, the train was moving through a tunnel of ice, faces pressed against the windows, reflections that weren't mine, watching from the darkness. The train stopped. This station was smaller, darker. The sign read, "The Fight." I knew before the doors opened. The smell, the tightness in my chest, the sound of raised voices echoing from somewhere close. My last Christmas with my family. The argument. The words I couldn't take back. "I'm not doing this," I said, backing away. The conductor blocked the aisle. "This is your seat," he said firmly. The doors opened anyway. I saw myself standing there, years younger, angry, shaking, coat half on. I watched myself shout, watched my mother cry, watched my father turn away. I tried to scream at that version of me, to stop, to apologize. He didn't hear me. The doors slammed shut. The younger me stayed behind. The train lurched forward. "You see," the conductor said quietly, "Christmas doesn't care about intent, only completion." The next stops came faster. The year someone didn't come back. The empty chair. The apology you never said. At each station, passengers were taken. Some screamed, some begged, some walked calmly, resigned. Their seats stayed warm when they left. The train grew quieter. Finally, only a few of us remained. The intercom chimed softly. "Final stop," it said. "This year." The train slowed. Snow fell heavily outside the windows. I saw the station. It was the one I had started from, but wrong. Decorations hung broken and tangled. Lights flickered weakly. The clock above the platform read 11:59 p.m. The conductor turned to me. "You can get off," he said, "or you can stay." "What happens if I stay?" I asked. He smiled, and for the first time I saw his face. It was mine, older, hollow-eyed. "You become part of the schedule." The bell rang. Midnight. The doors opened. I ran. I don't remember hitting the platform. I don't remember the fall. I only remember the sound of the train pulling away behind me, metal screaming like something alive and angry. I woke up on a bench. Morning light filtered through the station. December 26th. Snow melting. Trains running normally again. No sign of the black cars. No schedule listing. I laughed, cried, went home. It's been a year. Christmas Eve again. I'm at the station. I don't know why. The board flickers. Every train is canceled, except one. 12:25 a.m. Christmas Express, on time and in my pocket. There's a ticket with my name on it. Because something went wrong that Christmas, and the train is still running. I shouldn't have answered the phone. That's the moment everything tipped, quietly, politely, like Christmas itself didn't want to draw attention to the mistake. The call came at 11:48 p.m. on Christmas Eve. I remember the time because I was watching the seconds tick away on the microwave clock, waiting for the day to end, waiting for permission to sleep, waiting for the world to move on without me. The phone rang once, stopped, then rang again. I didn't recognize the number. I almost let it go to voicemail. But Christmas has a way of making you feel guilty for ignoring things even when you shouldn't. So I answered. Hello? There was breathing on the other end, slow, measured, like someone counting between each inhale. I think I have the wrong number, a man said finally. His voice was calm, too calm, flat in a way that felt practiced. That's okay, I replied. It's late. Yes, he said, it is. Silence stretched. I waited for him to hang up. He didn't. Instead, he said, Did you finish Christmas? The question caught me off guard. What? Christmas, he repeated. Did you finish it this year? I don't know what you mean, I said. He exhaled slowly. That's what I was afraid of. The line went dead. I stood in my kitchen for a long moment, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to nothing. Eventually, I laughed it off. Some drunk caller, some weird prank. Still, I locked the door. I live in a small house at the edge of town, cheap, quiet, and isolated enough that Christmas doesn't bother knocking. No decorations this year, no tree, no music. Just a single strand of white lights along the window, half of them burnt out. The microwave clock ticked closer to midnight, 11:53, 11:54. The phone rang again. Same number. I didn't answer this time. The voicemail notification popped up immediately. Against my better judgment, I listened. The man's voice was closer now. You didn't finish, he said, so it's starting over. The lights flickered. At 11:59, the power went out. Not just my house. Every light outside vanished at once. The street dissolved into darkness so complete, it felt like the world had been turned off. Then, softly, I heard singing. Not from outside, from inside the walls. A Christmas carol, hummed slowly, deliberately, each note slightly out of tune. I followed the sound into the living room, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The TV turned on by itself. Static filled the screen, then resolved into an image. My house. From across the street. Snow falling gently. A figure stood on the sidewalk, staring directly into the camera, staring at me. My phone rang again. I answered without thinking. Who are you? I demanded. I already told you, the man replied. I have the wrong number. The figure on the TV lifted a hand and waved. My hand began to rise. I forced it back down. No, I whispered. You always do that, the man said gently. Right before things go wrong. The front door opened. I hadn't unlocked it. Cold air poured in, carrying the smell of pine and old dust. Footsteps crossed the threshold, slow, deliberate, like the person entering wanted to be heard. I backed away into the living room. A man stepped inside. He looked ordinary at first glance, dark coat, gloves, and knit hat pulled low. But his face was wrong. Not distorted, not monstrous, just unfinished. Like someone had stopped halfway through deciding what he should look like. You shouldn't be here, I said. He nodded. Correct, he replied. Neither should you. What do you want? To complete the exchange, he said. He gestured toward the TV. The image changed. It showed my childhood home, decorated, alive. My parents moved around the kitchen, younger than they should have been. My sister laughed in the background. The clock above the stove read 11:59 p.m. My chest tightened. That already happened, I whispered. The man tilted his head. No, he said. It started. The phone vibrated in my hand. A text message appeared. Unknown. You left early. I didn't leave early, I said. I stayed. I remember. The man smiled sadly. You stayed physically, he said, but you weren't there. The walls of my living room began to stretch, the corners bending inward like melting wax. Christmas lights appeared along the ceiling, glowing weakly. Christmas doesn't end when the clock hits midnight, he continued. It ends when everyone stays until it's done. The TV flickered again. This time, it showed me. Standing in my parents' doorway, years ago, coat on, keys in hand, anger sharp and unresolved, leaving before dinner, before dessert, before forgiveness. I was tired, I whispered. Yes, the man said. So Christmas waited. The phone rang in my hand. Caller ID, home. I dropped it. The ringing continued anyway. The man stepped closer. Every year, he said, you get further away. But the call still goes through. What happens now? I asked. He glanced at the clock. 11:59. Now, he said. We see if you answer correctly. The room collapsed inward. Suddenly, I was standing in my childhood living room, fully real, fully solid. The tree stood in the corner, lights glowing warmly. The table was set. Laughter echoed from the kitchen. My mother stepped into the room and smiled. There you are, she said. We were starting to worry. My throat burned. I can't stay, I said. I don't belong here anymore. Her smile faded slightly. That's what you said last time. The clock ticked, didn't move. My father appeared behind her, watching me carefully. You can't leave in the middle, he said. I did, I whispered. Yes, he replied. And look what happened. The walls flickered. For just a moment, I saw the truth. Dozens of versions of this room layered on top of each other. Christmases repeating, folding in on themselves, trying to close a loop that never finished. The man from my house stood in the corner now. You can go, he said, but someone has to stay. The phone rang again, louder, insistent. I looked at the table, at the empty chair, at the place set for me. The clock cracked. Midnight struck. The lights went out. I woke up on my couch. Christmas morning, sunlight through the window. The house quiet, normal. My phone buzzed. Sister, you left early again. Hope you're okay. Relief washed over me. I laughed. I cried. I told myself it was over. Tonight is December 26th. I'm writing this because my phone rang at 11:48 p.m. Same number. This time, when I answered, I heard my own voice. You still didn't finish, it said. Outside, Christmas lights flicker back on across the street. Inside my house, the clock has stopped at 11:59, and I finally understand. Something went wrong on Christmas, and the call is still ringing. The snow should have melted. That's the detail everyone misses when I try to explain it. Christmas came and went, the calendar flipped, the radio station stopped pretending to care. But the snow stayed. Not piled up, not drifting. Just there. Perfect. Untouched, like the world had been paused and forgotten. And I was the only one who noticed. I live in a small town that people only pass through on their way somewhere else. We get tourists in December because we look good in Christmas lights. Brick buildings, old lampposts, a town square straight out of a postcard. Every year we do the same things. Tree lighting, caroling, Christmas Eve parade. Every year, nothing changes until this one. The first thing that went wrong happened during the parade. I remember because I was standing near the courthouse steps, holding a cup of burnt hot chocolate, watching the floats crawl past like tired animals. Kids waved, parents smiled, Fake snow drifted down from machines mounted on trucks. Then the real snow started falling. Heavy, silent, straight down. People laughed at first, holding out their hands, delighted by the timing. The parade kept moving, though slower now. The Santa on the final float waved harder, as if enthusiasm could outrun weather. Then the music stopped. Not gradually, instantly. Every speaker went dead at the same time. The float slowed to a stop. Snow thickened, swallowing sound, swallowing color. Within seconds, the parade was gone, not dispersed, not ended, just missing. The street was empty. No floats, no people, no footprints, just snow. I stood there alone, hot chocolate cooling in my hands, unable to move. Someone behind me spoke. "Did we already do the parade?" I turned. People stood around me now, confused but calm, like waking from a shared daydream. A woman checked her phone. A child tugged his mother's coat. "Guess it got canceled," someone said. No one else seemed alarmed. I was, because I knew what I had seen, and because the snow kept falling long after it should have stopped. By Christmas morning, the town was buried, not dangerously, not enough to stop anything, just enough to soften edges, to muffle sound. Plows ran, but the snow returned minutes later, settling exactly as it had before, like it remembered where it belonged. I noticed something else that morning. The church bells didn't ring. They always rang at 9. Always. I walked to the square. The big tree stood lit, ornaments gleaming beneath fresh snow. People milled about, sipping coffee, exchanging gifts. Everything looked normal. Too normal. I stopped an older man I recognized, Mr. Caldwell, who'd lived here longer than anyone. "Didn't you hear the bells?" I asked. He frowned. "Hear what?" "The bells, this morning." He smiled politely. "They don't ring on Christmas anymore." "That's not true," I said. "They rang every year." He shook his head. "You must be thinking of before." "Before what?" He paused, then laughed lightly. "Before now." And walked away. The next thing I noticed was the photos. At the drugstore, there's a rack of postcards. Snowy streets, the courthouse lit up, kids sledding on the hill behind the school. I flipped through them while waiting in line. Every card showed the same thing. The town, the snow, the tree. No people. Not a single person in any photo. I bought one and examined it closely. No signs of editing, no blur where people should have been. Just empty streets under perfect snow. On the back, someone had written in looping handwriting, "Merry Christmas. You're still here." I dropped it like it burned. The cashier looked at me strangely. "You okay?" "Where did these come from?" I asked. She glanced at the rack. "We've always had them." "No," I said. "These are new." She smiled patiently. "Everything is new once." By December 26th, the snow still hadn't melted. The forecast promised sun. The temperature rose. Nothing changed. People didn't question it. They shoveled, drove, lived around it like it had always been this way. Christmas decorations stayed up, lights glowing day and night, never burning out. I went home and turned on the TV. Every channel showed the same thing. Our town. A live feed from above, snow falling, no people visible. A Chiron scrolled along the bottom of the screen. Christmas continues. I turned it off. The reflection in the dark screen lagged behind my movement. That night, I dreamed I was buried, not suffocating, waiting. Snow pressed gently against my face, my chest, my eyes. I could hear voices above me, laughter, music, carols sung slightly off-key. No one was digging, no one was leaving. I woke up screaming. Outside my window, snow fell steadily, soundless, endless. On the third day after Christmas, I found the footprints. They appeared outside my house overnight, neat, evenly spaced prints leading away from my door and into the street. only away, none coming back. I followed them. They led to the town square, where the tree lights still glowed. The footprints circled the tree once, then disappeared beneath untouched snow. In the center of the circle lay something half buried, a Santa hat. I recognized it instantly. It was the one from the parade. I looked up. The tree ornaments reflected the square back at me, dozens of tiny mirrors. In every reflection, I was alone, except one. In one ornament, just barely visible, the square was full of people, standing still, watching. I ran to the courthouse. The doors were unlocked. Inside, the air smelled like pine and old paper. Garland hung along the railings, brittle and dry. At the far end of the hall stood a large glass display case I had never seen before. Inside it sat a snow globe, not a decorative one, a large one, almost as tall as my chest. Inside was the town, perfectly detailed. The tree, the square, the courthouse. Tiny figures stood frozen in place, dozens of them, hundreds. I leaned closer. My breath fogged the glass. The figures weren't frozen, they were paused, mid-step, mid-wave, mid-smile. I recognized them, the parade, the floats, Santa, arm raised, children reaching for candy. Someone stood behind me. You weren't supposed to see that. I turned. A woman stood there, dressed in a red coat dusted with snow. Her face was pale, ageless. Her eyes reflected light like glass. "What is this?" I whispered. She glanced at the globe. "Christmas." "That's not," she interrupted gently. Something went wrong. My heart pounded. "You did this." She shook her head. "You did." I stared at her. "I didn't." "You noticed," she said. "That's the problem." She stepped closer. The air grew colder. "Christmas works because people leave," she continued. "They come together, then disperse. Memory replaces presence." She placed a hand on the glass. This year, too many people wanted to stay. The figures inside the globe twitched. Tiny hands pressed against the glass from within. "What happens now?" I asked. Her smile was sad. "Now it has to balance." She turned the globe slightly. Snow inside it began to fall, violently. I saw figures disappear beneath it. "You can help," she said. I shook my head. "No," she tilted her head. "You already are." The next morning, the town was quieter. Fewer people out, fewer cars, the snow thicker. I walked through streets that felt wider than they should have been. Houses stood decorated, lights on, doors unlocked. Inside each one, I found the same thing. A table set, food untouched, a chair pulled slightly back, as if someone had just stood up and never returned. I saw my reflection in a window. Behind me, the snow fell harder. I understood then. The snow wasn't covering the town, it was collecting it. I ran. I don't know where I thought I could go. At the edge of town, the road stretched forward, clear, dry, normal. I stepped onto it. The snow stopped at the line. I turned back. The town stood behind me, quiet, glowing, buried. The woman in the red coat stood beside the road. "You can leave," she said. "That's how it fixes itself." I swallowed. "And the others?" She looked back at the town. They already stayed. I looked down at my boots. Snow clung to them. I hadn't noticed when it happened. It wouldn't brush off. "I can't," I whispered. She nodded. "I know." She stepped back. The road behind me vanished. Snow rushed forward, swallowing asphalt, signs, distance. The town breathed. I woke up in my bed. December 25th. Morning light, snow falling. The radio played carols softly. Everything normal. Except now, when I look out my window. The streets are empty. No footprints, no cars, no people, just snow. And in the glass of my reflection, I can see tiny lights behind my eyes, like a town. waiting, because something went wrong this Christmas, and it's still snowing. I shouldn't have answered the door. I know that now. It was Christmas Eve. Snow draped over the town like a soft white blanket, muffling everything. Lights twinkled along rooftops, wreaths hung from doors, and for the first time in years, I decided to stay in my house alone. I live alone, always have. My family's gone, my friends scattered, and I used to find comfort in solitude, especially at Christmas. No expectations, no reminders of past mistakes, just quiet. And that's why the knocking scared me. It started around 11:30 p.m., a slow, measured rap at the door, 3 beats, then a pause, then 3 more. I told myself it was the wind or a neighbor playing a prank. I was wrong. I opened the door, careful, peering into the snowy darkness. No one. Then a whisper. "Merry Christmas." It carried from the street, soft, almost pleasant. I stepped out onto the porch. Footprints were there, new in the fresh snow, leading away from the door, then circling back toward it. I froze. They were small, children's footprints, but they were too evenly spaced, too perfect. And then I heard it, a carol, harmonized voices, 4-part, singing Silent Night. I strained to see in the dim light. The song was faint, distant, but unmistakable. I went back inside, locked the door. The caroling didn't stop. It echoed from somewhere in the house, or maybe the air itself. Walls shook gently with the vibrations of voices that didn't belong here. I called 911. The operator asked if there were any intruders. I said I didn't know. I didn't see anyone. The voices were everywhere, yet nowhere. The operator said someone would check. No one came. By midnight, the air was thick. Cold, yes, but something else. Something heavy, patient. The lights flickered. The Christmas tree's bulb twinkled oddly, like it was responding to the singing. Then, the front door creaked. Slowly, not violently, not broken, just invited. I didn't move. A shadow passed across the threshold. Not one person, a group. I could see them faintly now. Children in Victorian clothing, faces pale, eyes too bright, smiling too widely. They carried lanterns that didn't glow with fire, but with some unnatural light. They began to sing louder, louder than was possible. The sound filled every corner of the room, vibrating through the floor, the walls, my chest. I tried to shut the door. It wouldn't budge. I ran. The living room stretched unnaturally. The tree elongated. The ornaments hung higher than they should have. Windows became mirrors, reflecting the group behind me, their mouths moving in harmony. The song shifted into something I didn't know, a slow, deliberate hymn, layered over itself, voices overlapping. One of the children raised a hand, pointed directly at me. "You're late," it said in perfect unison. All of them. I stumbled backward. "What?" I whispered. The largest shadow moved closer, taller, darker. Its mouth was hidden by a hood, but its voice filled my head. "Christmas waits for no one. You left last year." I shivered. I knew what it meant. Last year. I'd chosen to spend Christmas alone, ignoring the old traditions, ignoring the invitations. I thought I could escape the rituals, escape the town's strange, suffocating sense of expectation. I was wrong. I ran upstairs, locked myself in the bedroom. The caroling followed. The singing came from beneath the door, the windows, even the walls. My own reflection in the mirror sang along, smiling, echoing the words I hadn't said aloud. I grabbed my phone, called my neighbor, no answer. Tried my parents' number, disconnected. Tried emergency services, deadline. The singing grew louder, pressed into my head, a pressure behind my eyes. Then came the laughter. Not joyful, not childlike, hysterical. It came from the hall, from the closet, from beneath the bed, and I realized the voices weren't outside. They had never been outside. They had been inside all along. Hours passed, or maybe minutes, I couldn't tell. Time itself seemed warped. I heard the voices stop for a moment. I dared to peek from the bed. The room had changed. The ceiling was higher, the walls farther apart, and through the window, the snow wasn't falling anymore. It was climbing, rising up like water, snowdrifts taller than the house spilling across rooftops, blocking the street, blocking the sky. The children were in the room now, floating. Their feet didn't touch the ground. Their lanterns glowed brighter, illuminating every corner of the warped space. "You cannot leave," they said together. "Why?" I screamed. "Because Christmas isn't finished," they replied. "You broke it last year." The leader stepped forward, a shadowy figure with no distinguishable features, holding a bell. When it rang it, the sound pierced my chest. Ding, ding, ding. Each strike echoed through my entire being. And then the room was filled with more children, dozens, hundreds, pressing closer, faces pale, eyes empty, smiling as if they had been waiting for me my whole life. I screamed. I don't remember the next hours. I woke up at the bottom of the stairs. The house looked normal again. Christmas lights twinkled on the tree, ornaments hanging straight. No snow had drifted inside. I thought I had imagined it. But when I looked at the front door, I saw the footprints in the dust on the porch, children's footprints circling the threshold. And when I glanced in the living room mirror, I wasn't alone. Now it's December 26th. The snow outside hasn't melted. I hear whispers at night, small voices harmonizing just beneath hearing. Sometimes they call my name. Sometimes they sing the old carols, off-key, just enough to make me twitch. I try to leave, drive to another town, stay in a hotel. I cannot. Every road that leaves the town disappears into a snowstorm I can't penetrate. Every night I hear the door knock. Every night I hear the singing. Something went wrong this Christmas. And it isn't over, because the carolers never leave, and now they are waiting for me to join them. I always liked Christmas lights, not the big displays, not the public stuff. I liked the quiet glow of a single house, the kind that makes the windows warm and safe looking when the snow falls. That was my tradition. Come home, pour myself a cup of cocoa, and stare at the little lights along my porch, watching them blink gently. Until this year. It began on Christmas Eve. I'd finished decorating my house, nothing fancy, just a single strand of white bulbs along the roofline. Inside, the tree flickered softly, ornaments reflecting the warm glow. I sat on the couch, staring out the window at the first snow of the season, thinking how perfect it was. Then I heard it, a soft click. I froze. It came again, followed by another. Not from outside, not from the TV, from inside the walls. I strained my ears, heart starting to pound. I told myself it was just the house settling, old wiring, the usual noises. But then the lights on the tree dimmed, and in the silence that followed, I heard faint whispers. "Do you remember?" I jumped, spun toward the sound, but no one was there. Just the faint dancing shadows of the tree lights across the walls. I shook my head. Maybe I was imagining it. I poured myself a drink and tried to focus on something else. Around 11:30 p.m., the lights on the tree flickered violently, then went out. The porch lights outside stayed on, blinking in a perfect, steady rhythm. I got up to check the breaker, but everything inside the house worked. It was only the tree and every strand of indoor decoration flickering now in uneven, impossible patterns. Then I heard the tapping. At first soft, then growing louder. Not on the window, not on the door, on the walls, inside the walls. My blood ran cold. I grabbed my phone, tried calling my neighbor, no signal. Tried 911, busy. I ran to the front door, peered out. The snow had stopped falling, but the street lights flickered. One house in particular, across the street, dark all year round, now glowed with strings of Christmas lights, impossibly bright. No one had ever lived there. And then I saw them, figures, standing perfectly still on the lawn. Children, dozens of them, all wearing old-fashioned coats and hats, faces pale, expressionless. They didn't move, they didn't blink, but they stared directly at me. I slammed the door, locked it. The whispers started again, this time inside my head. Not words I spoke aloud, words that pressed into my skull, making my thoughts jumble. You left. You always leave. I stumbled back into the living room, clutching my head. The lights came back on, but it wasn't normal. The tree lights didn't blink randomly. They moved in patterns, shapes I couldn't understand, spiraling along the branches. The ornaments twisted in place, reflecting images I knew but hadn't seen in years. I saw my childhood home, my parents' faces frozen mid-laughter, my sister smiling, her mouth moving, but no sound came out. I tried to turn away. A low, humming song started, almost subliminal, coming from the lights themselves. The ornaments shook gently, casting shadows across the walls that moved independently. I wanted to scream, but no sound emerged. And then I noticed the reflection in the window. Not my reflection. A crowd. 100 versions of myself, all standing silently behind me, watching. I ran to the kitchen. My hands shook. Every cabinet door was slightly ajar, though I'd closed them hours ago. The refrigerator hummed an unnatural tune, and the faucet dripped, though the sink was empty. I grabbed the front door, tried to step outside. The snow was gone. The street was gone. Instead, I stood on a hilltop, covered in snow, yes, but the town was wrong. The houses leaned at odd angles, streets bent in impossible loops, windows glowed with Christmas lights, but inside each one, shadows moved, figures pacing, laughing, crying, but out of sync with reality. A voice called from below, familiar. My father's voice, shouting my name, calling me home for dinner. I froze. I hadn't heard him in years. He died 10 years ago. A lantern floated toward me, not held by anyone, just floating. A child's laugh followed, another lantern, another laugh. The figures began to climb the hill toward me. Children, adults, versions of myself from different years, all smiling, all watching. You didn't finish it, the voice said, deep, layered, coming from everyone and nowhere at once. What? I yelled. Christmas, it said. You always leave. You always go home too soon. The snow rose higher. The hill extended, reaching into the sky. I tried to run back, but the ground stretched endlessly. Behind me, lights appeared, forming paths I couldn't navigate. Figures multiplied, the snow thickened, and I realized they weren't just people. They were time itself. Past Christmases. Every year I left early, skipped traditions, ignored the lights, ignored the warmth. They were here, waiting. A bell rang, not outside, not in my hands, in my chest, every heartbeat a strike. The children laughed, the lanterns spun faster, snowflakes fell, each one a tiny reflection of my past, freezing me in place. Stay, they said, finish what you started. I screamed, but it didn't leave my mouth. The lights wrapped around me, ornaments spun, snow swallowed my feet, the ground vanished, and I understood. If I tried to leave again, I wouldn't just fail. I would become part of it. Another reflection in a lantern, a shadow behind a tree, a whisper inside someone else's head. I woke up on the couch. Christmas morning, sunlight spilling through the window, snow falling gently outside. I told myself it was a dream, a hallucination. I made coffee, looked at the tree, everything normal, until I saw the reflection, not my own. A crowd behind me, all smiling, all waiting. The snow didn't stop falling, the lights didn't stop blinking, and somewhere, far away or inside my house, a bell rang. Now it's December 26th. The snow hasn't melted, the lights still flicker. I cannot leave, and I know deep down that every Christmas I've ever ignored, every tradition I skipped, every time I left early, they've been waiting for me. Something went wrong this Christmas, and it will never be right again. I should have known something was wrong the moment I bought it. It was Christmas Eve, and I had waited too long. The tree lot was almost empty. I spotted a small, perfectly shaped fir at the back, leaning slightly to the left with a trunk so straight it looked unnatural. The man selling it smiled, nodded, and said, "That one chooses its owner." I laughed it off. I carried it home, lights in the car, snow falling softly around me. The smell was intoxicating, pine, sap, and something older, almost like dust from a forgotten attic. I set it up in the living room, watered it, and decorated it with care. Lights, ornaments, the little ceramic angel my grandmother had given me years ago. I admired it for a while, then sat down with a cup of cocoa, letting the warm glow fill the room. It was beautiful. Perfect. Too perfect. Around 10:30 p.m., I noticed the first thing that felt wrong. The tree lights blinked out of sync. I didn't remember setting them that way. I went to adjust the plugs. Nothing. The lights were on their own. A faint hum came from the tree, almost imperceptible at first, like a refrigerator left on too long. I leaned closer. The ornaments, tiny balls of glass, wooden figurines, twitched, just slightly, as if something inside them had woken. I shook my head. It's the wind, the house settling. But the wind wasn't strong enough to move anything, and the house had settled long ago. At midnight, I went to bed. The snow had started falling outside again, heavy and soft. I could hear it on the roof. It was peaceful, or it should have been. Then I heard whispers, soft, urgent, coming from the living room. I froze. "Hello?" I called, my voice shaking. The whispers stopped. I told myself it was my imagination, just the quiet of the night, my mind playing tricks. But the feeling stayed, the sense of being watched. I drifted off to an uneasy sleep. I woke to the smell of smoke. The tree's lights were brighter now, not blinking, glowing steadily, almost painfully. The hum had grown louder, a low vibration through the floorboards, the walls, the air itself. I got up. The ornaments were moving more clearly now, circling the branches, spinning slowly. One of them, a small red ball, flew off the branch and rolled across the floor toward me. I stepped back. Then I saw it. Reflected in the window, behind me, was something I didn't recognize, a shadow, tall, dark, leaning over the tree. Its face was obscured, but its eyes gleamed in the light of the ornaments. I spun around. Nothing, just the tree, just me. Over the next hour, things escalated. The ornaments rearranged themselves. Garlands twisted like snakes. The angel on top shifted slightly, head tilting to look directly at me. I grabbed my phone. No signal. The battery drained rapidly. Even the clock on the microwave had stopped. Midnight stretched endlessly. I tried to leave the room. The front door wouldn't budge. Windows wouldn't open. The lights outside were flickering, reflecting off the snow, casting long, impossible shadows that weren't mine. And then the tree spoke. A whisper, deep and layered, coming from the trunk, the branches, everywhere at once. "You left last year." "What?" I stammered. "You left it unfinished." The ornaments shook violently. One of the glass balls shattered, spilling red liquid onto the carpet. My heart pounded. I remembered. Last Christmas, I'd stayed at a friend's place, avoiding the empty house, avoiding the memories, avoiding the tree. The tree never forgave me. The hum became a chant, rising in pitch. The snow outside turned black as if absorbing every bit of light. The shadows in the room elongated, twisting into forms that almost resembled people. People I had known, people I had ignored, people I had lost. One of them stepped out of the shadows, a woman. Her face pale, eyes hollow, her mouth moving but no sound coming out. She reached toward me. "You must finish it," she whispered. I backed away. The tree's lights flared, blinding me for a moment. When I could see again, the room had changed. The living room walls were gone. The ceiling had stretched impossibly high. The ornaments hung in midair, spinning, forming patterns I couldn't comprehend. The snow fell inside now, fine, glittering, cold. It dusted the floor, my hair, my shoulders. I ran, tried every door, every window. The house looped back on itself. I ran down hallways that led to the same room. The tree always stood in the center, bigger, more alive than before. The ornaments glimmered with tiny reflections, my past Christmases, moments I had forgotten, mistakes I had made, loved ones I had ignored. They moved as if watching me, judging me, and the whispers never stopped. I collapsed in front of the tree. The angel on top looked at me, the small porcelain face smiling knowingly. The hum rose to a roar. The tree's branches grew, stretching toward me, filling the room, crowding me, pressing against my chest, my shoulders. "You must stay," the voice said. "You left last year. You leave too soon." The floor beneath me became snow, deep snow, rising, burying my legs. I tried to scream. I tried to move. The tree loomed above me, branches wrapping around my arms, holding me in place. The ornaments spun faster. Each one reflected a different Christmas I had skipped, each face frozen in disappointment. I realized then, the tree wasn't just alive, it was keeping score. And I had failed. Hours or maybe minutes passed. Time had no meaning, I couldn't tell. The shadows receded slightly. The snow stopped falling. The lights dimmed. But the angel's eyes glowed. I could hear it breathing, watching, waiting. Finally, everything went quiet. I woke up on the couch, sunlight streaming through the windows, snow falling gently outside. Everything seemed normal. I told myself it was a dream, a hallucination, just stress and loneliness. I smiled weakly, sipping my cocoa. But when I looked at the tree, I saw it. The angel's face had changed. Its eyes were no longer porcelain white. They gleamed, deep red. And in the reflection of the ornaments, dozens of small faces stared at me. Faces of past Christmases, faces of people I had ignored, abandoned, forgotten. The hum started again. It's now December 26th. The tree still glows. The lights never went out. The ornaments move when I'm not looking. The snow outside refuses to melt, and every night I hear whispers. Something went wrong this Christmas, and I know deep down I will never leave, because the tree doesn't let go, because the Christmas I avoided has found me. I had never celebrated Christmas alone before. Not by choice exactly. Circumstances, distance, family obligations, whatever excuse I had used in the past, none of it mattered anymore. This year, I was alone. My apartment was small but warm. Snow had begun to fall gently outside my window, coating the streetlights in soft halos. I had a tree, a modest one, lights carefully strung, ornaments arranged just right. I poured myself a glass of wine, sat back on the couch, and admired it. It was quiet. Too quiet. Around 10:30 p.m., a knock shattered the silence. I froze. Visitors at this hour were rare. I wasn't expecting anyone. I moved cautiously toward the door, peering through the peephole. No one, just shadows stretching across the snow-dusted street. "Hello?" I called. No reply. I shook my head, chalked it up to nerves, and went back to my wine. The knock came again, 3 sharp raps, then silence. I opened the door. Nothing. But I saw footprints, small, childlike, pressed into the snow, leading from the street, curving around my porch, and disappearing into the dark. I told myself I was imagining things, maybe some kids playing a prank, but then I heard a whisper from the living room. "Come play." I spun around. The room was empty. The tree lights glowed softly, ornaments shimmering. I told myself it was the wine, or the quiet settling into paranoia. I tried to ignore it. I poured another glass, sat back down. The whisper came again, louder this time. "Don't ignore me." I froze. I shouldn't have. The lights on the tree began to flicker. Not the usual blink, not the pattern I had strung. This was chaotic, violent. Ornaments shifted slightly, tilting as if moved by an unseen hand. My heart raced. Then the temperature dropped. The warmth of my apartment vanished, replaced by a cold that seemed to seep into my bones. The snow outside wasn't falling anymore. It was rising, growing taller, covering the streetlights, climbing the walls of my apartment building. It pressed against the windows as if trying to enter. I backed away from the glass, stumbled over the rug. The whispering grew into laughter, children laughing. I hadn't heard children all year, not real ones. And then the shadows moved. From the corner of the room, elongated shapes began to stretch toward me. Their limbs were thin, unnatural. Their faces were pale and smiling. Their eyes glimmered red in the reflection of the tree lights. I ran toward the door. Locked, tried the windows, locked. They were inside now. I could feel their presence. I stumbled into the kitchen. Glasses rattled. The refrigerator hummed a tune that wasn't familiar. Off-key, discordant, almost melodic in a way that made my teeth ache. I grabbed a knife. Anything to feel safe. The whispers came again. Names, every Christmas I had ignored, every family member I had disappointed, every friend I had left behind. They were all calling me. Every voice layered on top of the others, forming a cacophony that pressed into my skull. The tree lights flared. Ornaments fell from the branches and hovered mid-air. Each one reflected a memory. A Christmas I had skipped, a dinner I had missed, a gift I hadn't sent. Each one stared at me, judging, accusing. Then, one of them, the smallest, closest to the floor, spoke. "You didn't finish it." I didn't understand. "You left it unfinished last year," it said. I remembered. I had ignored Christmas last year, stayed with a friend, too tired, too lonely. I'd skipped traditions, skipped family, skipped everything. And now it was here. The shadows multiplied. Figures of children, adults, even versions of myself from past Christmases surrounded me. They moved closer, smiling, mouths open in silent laughter. The room seemed to stretch, the walls bending, the ceiling rising impossibly high. Snow began to fall inside, fine, cold, glittering. I was knee-deep in it before I could stop. The tree had grown, not taller, but alive. Its branches reached out like tendrils, ornaments spinning faster and faster. A small bell rang in its branches. The sound pierced my chest. My knees buckled. "You must stay," the voices said all at once. "Finish what you started," I screamed. No sound left my mouth. The figures laughed. The tree leaned closer. Snow swallowed my feet. Hours, or maybe minutes, passed. Time no longer existed. I don't know if I closed my eyes or if I ever slept. The lights never dimmed. The snow never melted. The voices never stopped. Eventually, everything went quiet. I woke up on the couch. Christmas morning. Sunlight through the windows, snow gently falling outside. Everything seemed normal. I told myself it was a dream. But when I looked at the tree, the angel at the top was smiling differently. Her eyes gleamed red. And the ornaments, dozens of faces stared at me. Faces of people I had ignored, abandoned, forgotten. The hum started again. Now it is December 26th. The snow hasn't melted. The tree lights are still blinking. Every night I hear the whispers, the knocks at the door, the laughter of children that aren't there. Something went wrong this Christmas, and I know, deep down, I will never be alone for Christmas again, because the visitor has arrived. I always loved Christmas, always. The way the snow sparkled on the rooftops, the smell of pine filling the house, the lights twinkling in the dark. But this year, everything went wrong. It started on Christmas Eve. I was alone in my apartment. My family had moved far away. My friends were all busy with their own lives, and I thought I'd make the best of it. I set up a small tree by the window, hung my ornaments, and strung up a modest string of lights along the shelves. I brewed a cup of cocoa, wrapped myself in a blanket, and settled into my couch to enjoy the quiet. The first knock came at 11:48 p.m. I froze. Visitors at this hour? Impossible. I peered through the peephole. Nothing. Just the snow falling silently on the street. "Hello?" I called, my voice trembling slightly. No answer. I opened the door. Footprints, small, perfectly spaced, leading from the street to my porch and vanishing. I swallowed hard and closed the door. I tried to tell myself it was nothing. Maybe kids playing a prank, maybe a figment of my imagination. But the knocking returned, this time from inside the apartment. It started softly. Tap, tap, tap from the walls. I backed away, heart hammering. Then I heard singing. Not music from my phone, not a recording. Live voices, low, harmonized, coming from the walls, from the floor, from everywhere and nowhere. Silent night, but twisted, slow, off-key. I couldn't move. The air grew thick. I felt cold fingers brush my arms. The singing grew louder. The tree lights flickered violently, ornaments spinning as if caught in a storm. The little angel on top of the tree tilted its head to look directly at me. I felt a pressure in my chest, a heartbeat not my own. I ran to the front door, locked, windows locked, every exit blocked, and then I saw them. Children, dozens of them, pale, dressed in old-fashioned coats and hats, standing perfectly still on my walls, my floor, and reflections. Their eyes glowed faint red in the tree light. "You didn't finish it," one whispered. I shook my head. "What?" "The Christmas you left unfinished," it said in unison with the others. "You didn't stay. You left too early." I remembered. Last year I had stayed with a friend, avoiding the loneliness, the empty house, the memories. I had skipped Christmas. I had left it unfinished. The shadows multiplied. Figures appeared behind me, myself from past years, my parents, friends, strangers whose faces I recognized vaguely. They watched silently, waiting. The snow outside had stopped falling. The street lights dimmed. Inside, snow began to drift from the ceiling, fine, cold, blinding. The ornaments on the tree swirled in impossible patterns, reflecting every Christmas I had missed. I screamed. No sound came out. The angel atop the tree smiled. Its eyes were red. "You must stay," the voices said. "Finish it." Hours, or maybe minutes, passed. Time stretched until it had no meaning. I was knee-deep in the indoor snow. The children moved closer. Lanterns floated around me, illuminating faces from every Christmas I had abandoned, every memory I had ignored, every promise broken. I stumbled into the kitchen. The refrigerator hummed. The faucet dripped a discordant rhythm. Glasses rattled. Everything in the apartment was alive, moving in unnatural patterns. The hum from the tree became a roar. Branches reached out. Ornaments pressed against my chest. The snow rose higher. I sank. I tried to run. There was nowhere to go. The voices layered over themselves, a cacophony of accusation, laughter, and sorrow. "You left. You left us every year. You leave Christmas incomplete," I cried, tried to cover my ears, tried to hide, tried to vanish. The angel leaned forward, its porcelain face cracked into a grin. "It's time to finish." Suddenly, everything stopped. Silence. The lights dimmed. The snow froze in midair. I collapsed onto the floor. When I looked up, my apartment seemed normal. The tree stood quietly, ornaments in place, sunlight filtered in through the windows. I told myself it had been a dream, a hallucination caused by loneliness, stress, and wine. But the angel's eyes, they glimmered, red, watching, waiting. It is now December 26th. The snow outside hasn't melted. The lights on the tree still blink in uneven patterns. At night, I hear whispers through the walls, small voices harmonizing silent night, calling my name. Knocks at the door echo, though no one is there. Every memory of every Christmas I've ever ignored, every tradition I skipped, every loved one I left behind, they're here, all waiting. Something went wrong this Christmas, and I know deep down I will never leave it unfinished again, because the visitor never leaves. If you're still here, you're brave. Support the channel with a like, comment, and subscription.